And that? And what about that? Ooh. You can really work the way you
Hindi ako asong sunod, sunuran, panay lamang oo.
And that? And what about that? Ooh. You can really work the way you
Di ako papel na blanco, sulatan kung kailan mo gusto. Anong tingin mo sa sarili mo? Di lahat ng gusto dapat masunod, di lahat ng hiling dapat matupad mo. Dit natalo ako sa kanyang lagas, matagal kong kapit sa sarili ay bumibigtas. Pag sinabi kong ayaw, ayaw ko talaga. Di ako nagpapapilit, masyadong mahigpit ang kapit niya. Ba't pinapadapat pa nila ako parang ang may bakanan? Epekto raw ng serbesa, ako pa rin ang may. Wala akong sinabing oo, wala rin sa galaw at kilos ko. Anong laman ng isipan mo? Nagiging agresibo sa'king paghina, lumalakas loob mo. Ako pa rin ba ang puno-dulo nito? Di lahat ng gusto dapat masunod, di lahat ng hiling dapat matupad mo. Dit natalo ako sa kanyang lagas, matagal kong kapit sa sarili ay bumibigtas. Pag sinabi kong ayaw, ayaw ko talaga. Di ako nagpapapilit, masyadong mahigpit ang kapit niya. Ba't pinapadapat pa nila ako parang ang may bakanan? Epekto raw ng serbesa, ako pa rin ang may. La 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 nagiging agresibo sa'king paghina, lumalakas loob mo. Ako pa rin ba ang puno-dulo nito? Di lahat ng gusto dapat masunod, di lahat ng hiling dapat matupad. Dit natalo ako sa kanyang lagas, matagal kong kapit sa sarili ay bumibigtas. Pag sinabi kong ayaw, ayaw ko talaga. Di ako nagpapapilit, masyadong mahigpit
Ang multivitamin natin,
Dapat kayang protektahan ng buong katawan.
kaya we take
Centrum Advance. We get these and more.
From over 25 protective nutrients.
tulong para ang heart.
Eyes, resistensya at buong katawan, maprotektahan.
Centrum Advance.
Ngayon, ano bang takot mo?
Ang suwitsit ay bang-mang-mang, ang suwipol ay bang-hunghang. Ang babae sa lansangan, huwag iritan kundi igalang.
Pare, ang catcalling ay isang uri ng sexual harassment. Di biro ang sexual harassment at di nakakamacho ang pang-aabuso.
Huwag iritan kundi igalang.
Isang paalala mula sa Philippine Commission on Women.
Bakit nga ba di mabubuhay ang bayan kung walang kababaihan? Ngunit kung tayo'y saktan parang walang hanggan. Bakit nga ba nakaguhit sa ating mukha na tayong lahat ay biktima ng kalupitan, karahasan, pilit tayong dinadapa? Isang bilyong babae ang babangon, ito na ang ating panahon. Bangon, babae, bangon, ito na ang ating panahon. Itaas ang kamay, at tayo'y lalaban ng sabay-sabay. Bawat tindak, bawat galaw, buong kataway sumisigaw. Bangon, babae, bangon, ito na ang ating panahon. Isang bilyong babae ang babangon, ito na ang ating panahon. Bangon, bangon, no one can put us down, no one can hurt us now. Rise up and fight, rise up from the ground. Bangon, bangon, no one can put us down, no one can hurt us now. Rise up and fight, rise up from the ground. Titigil ng panggagahasa, huwag matakot at lumaban na. Tama na ang pang-aabuso, tumayo tayo, kaya natin ito. Ang bilyong babae ang babangon, tayo ang Gabriela ng ating panahon. Bangon, babae, bangon, ito na ang ating panahon. Itaas ang kamay, at tayo'y lalaban ng sabay-sabay. Bawat tindak, bawat galaw, buong kataway sumisigaw. Bangon, babae, bangon, ito na ang ating panahon. Bakit nga ba di mabubuhay ang bayan kung walang kababaihan? Ngunit kung tayo'y saktan parang walang hanggan. Bakit nga ba nakaguhit sa ating mukha na tayong lahat ay biktima ng kalupitan, karahasan, pilit tayong dinadapa? Isang bilyong babae ang babangon, ito na ang ating panahon. Bangon, babae, bangon, ito na ang ating panahon. Itaas ang kamay, at tayo'y lalaban ng sabay-sabay. Bawat tindak, bawat walang panggagahasa. Huwag matakot at lumaban na. Tama na ang pang-aabuso. Tumayo tayo, kaya natin to. Bilyong babae ang babangon. Tayo ang Gabriela ng ating panahon. Bangon, babae, bangon. Ito na ang ating panahon. Itaas ang kamay, itaas ang kamay. At tayo'y lalaban ng sabay-sabay. Bawat tindak, bawat galaw, buong kataway sumisigaw. Bangon, babae, bangon. Ito na ang ating panahon.
Grammarly helps you work more efficiently, which makes accomplishing your work goals easier than
Ang sumipol ay pangmunghang. Ang babae nanansalan. Huwag iritan kundi igalang.
Pare, ang catcalling ay isang uri ng sexual harassment. Di biro ang sexual harassment at di nakakamacho ang pang-aabuso.
Huwag iritan kundi igalang.
Isang paalala mula sa Philippine Commission on Women.
Viper on top of the building. Are you kidding?
Pare, ang catcalling ay isang uri ng sexual harassment. Di biro ang sexual harassment at di nakakamacho ang pang-aabuso.
Huwag iritan kundi igalang.
Isang paalala mula sa Philippine Commission on Women.
Ang sumipol ay pangmunghang. Ang babae nanansalan. Huwag iritan kundi igalang.
Pare, ang catcalling ay isang uri ng sexual harassment. Di biro ang sexual harassment at di nakakamacho ang pang-aabuso.
Huwag iritan kundi igalang.
Isang paalala mula sa Philippine Commission on Women.
Okay. Sorry. Stop share na.
Good morning to each and everyone. Good morning, students, to my co-faculty, and to our guest speaker for today. Before our program will be started with a prayer and then followed by the national anthem of the Philippines, and together with the goals, mission, and vision of the university. Thank you. Hello po, Ma'am Brenda. Wala pong audio.
Sorry.
Okay lang po.
Okay na?
Wala po yung video.
Ay.
As we observe the 18-day campaign to end violence against women or VOW from November 25th to December 12th, we ask you, Lord, to look with kindness upon all of us who are gathered here. Fill our hearts and minds with love, wisdom, and courage as we face our daily lives. We pray for all women and girls who suffer from domestic violence, rape, incest, sexual harassment, trafficking, prostitution, and other forms of violence. May they have the courage to break their silence, find protection, healing, and justice. We pray for the perpetrators of vow that they may learn to respect women and girls and stop the violence. O loving Father and Mother, send us your Spirit so that everything that we do will be done with love and respect for our fellow humans. Regardless of age, sex, class, ethnicity, and ability, O powerful God, develop in us a high regard for the thoughts, feelings, and experiences of everyone, and bestow on us the capacity to promote, protect, and fulfill the rights of women and girls. Almighty Creator, grant us the strength to stand up against all forms of violence happening to women and girls, the sharpness to recognize a silenced victim of vow, the courage to speak up against vow, the resourcefulness to help a victim of vow, and the resolve to never commit any form of vow. For all of this, we implore your guidance. Amen.
And now let's have the opening message from our co-faculty.
Hello. Good morning to everyone. Good morning to the faculty of the first year students handling NSTP 11. Also to the first year students. For this morning, the topic assigned for your class is gender and development. And our topic for this morning is gender sensitivity and inclusivity. So if you observe, it has started yesterday, the 18-day campaign to end the violence against women. So this started yesterday, November 25, November 26, and will end, actually it was November 25, and it will end on December 12. So the theme for this year celebration is vow-free community starts with me. And we are very fortunate to have we have our speaker this morning, champion of gender and development. So I'm honored to introduce her to you this morning. Our speaker is a faculty member of the Department of Philosophy, Faculty of Arts and Letters, and the Graduate School of the University of Santo Tomas, and a project-based research consultant at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. She obtained her undergraduate degree in political science from St. Louis University, here in Baguio City, and her master's degree in philosophy from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She finished her doctorate degree in philosophy at the University of Santo Tomas. She also served as Dean of the Office of Student Affairs and College Secretary of the College of Liberal Arts of the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila, where she taught for 10 years. Her research interests include feminist philosophy, gender studies, gender and development, existentialism, phenomenology, and policy analysis. She is a board member of the Philosophical Association of the Philippines and the Pathways Center for Lifelong Learning Incorporated, and a founding member of Women Doing Philosophy. Her being part of this responds to her goal to contribute to gender mainstreaming in education, and in particular to increase the presence and contribution of more women in philosophy in the Philippines, such as her current project called the Syllabi Gender Gap. So ladies and gentlemen, we are honored that we have with us our guest speaker for this morning, Dr. Gina A. Opiniano. I encourage everyone that if you have questions, you raise your questions after her talk, and you may also write your questions in the chat box. So let's all welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Gina A. Opiniano. Ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Brenda. Thank you indeed for the introduction. I hope I am clearly heard. Please let me know if I'm not.
Yes, ma'am, you are heard.
Okay. Thank you once again to the organizers of this event. A GAD morning to everyone, as they say. GAD, which is spelled as GAD and stands for Gender and Development, as mentioned earlier by Ma'am Brenda. So I'm really excited to be speaking and to be discussing with PNU students. And it's nice to be actually able to share to these students, to PNU community once again, as we have in the previous year. So allow me to share a few things about what I have been advocating for, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up something from our discussion today. Let me just go to the slide for the presentation. So welcome to our first year students. And then I hope you're also okay that I use Filipino and sometimes English in my discussion. Can you confirm if you can see my slide now? Looks like it's...
Not yet pa, ma'am.
Mhm.
Double click to enter full screen, sabi niya.
Okay.
Ayan. Okay na, ma'am. Okay na po.
Okay. There you go. Thank you, Ma'am Brenda. All right. So the topic for today is on gender sensitivity towards inclusivity. And this is part of the initiative of PNU South Luzon in partnership with Pathways Center for Lifelong Learning, which I'm also part of. And in commemoration of what was called the 18-day campaign, okay, 18-day campaign to end violence against women and their children. So the theme, the specific theme for today, actually, for the commemoration of the 18-day campaign, actually is Filipino, marespeto, safe spaces, kasali tayo. Kaya I like how the videos and the songs have been particularly chosen to jumpstart today's session. So you are encouraged to actually share or take part of any at any time. If you would like to share something, please utilize the chat box. Sa mga nasa YouTube, baka pwede rin kayong mag-share ng any ideas. And later on, if we'll have time, we'll talk about your questions or we'll cover some concerns and hopefully ma-illuminate o ma-clarify tayo sa mga concerns na to. Thank you to the teachers as well who are here supportive of this endeavor of the NSTP and of course the Gender and Development Office. So as what I said, this is part of the 18-day campaign to end violence against women. Vow-free community starts with me. That has been the tagline of the 18-day campaign since 2016 hanggang next year po yan. So our goal as part of the Filipino community, our goal is to take part in the achievement or in the fulfillment of a safe space para sa lahat towards a vow-free community. So sana makayanan natin yon. Kaya ba yon? I believe so. And today we'll talk about some important points on how we can contribute to the addressing or to achieving a vow-free community. So my sharing for today will come from my experiences as a GAD advocate, as an educator, and at the same time as researcher whose focus is also on gender studies. Now, of course, let's begin with a few points. Dear students, please take note that this venue, although it's virtual, please consider this as your safe space, a safe space for everyone. And of course, we would like to also be able to assure others that this is also a safe space for them. So that we would like to reiterate, and I'd like to just share a few things for you to keep in mind para masabi mo na safe space ang isang space. So in order to create a safe space for this webinar, I hope you commit to these statements. I will be open-minded. I will be a good listener. I will respect other people. I will ensure that my language is gender neutral. Okay, I will respect others' account of their experiences of marginalization and honor their vulnerability by not disputing their lived experiences. In other words, ay respetuhin natin ang bawat isa. Huwag nating i-invalidate ang mga nararanasan o naranasan ng ibang tao. In fact, let's lend our open ears to listen to them. And if you feel like sharing something, please do so. And hopefully makatulong o makagaan ito sa inyo. All right. So just a few reminders. Now we can begin by actually identifying what is our preferred pronoun. So if you notice in my Zoom name, I have deliberately included my preferred pronoun. So this will be helpful in properly addressing individuals later on. So kung ano man ang preferred pronoun ninyo, pwede ninyong ilagay dyan. Pwede kayong mag-rename para ma-acknowledge ng iba na ito ang gusto kong pronoun whenever you address me. Others would want to be referred according to the they and them. The more what do you call this? The non-binary pronoun, as they say. Okay, so now let's begin with a quick activity on what I call the "it's a boy, it's a girl" thing activity. I don't know if we have these emojis, no, or icons right here in Zoom, pero siguro para mas simple, we can maybe just use the letters, okay, and you may share your answers in the chat. So I'm going to be giving statements or sharing words, and what I'd like you to do is to use the chat and answer whether this concept is a girl thing or a boy thing or could be for both. Okay, I hope that's clear. So meron akong babanggitin na mga concepts, okay, o kaya mga activities or actions. Now, what you will do is to use the chat and answer by starting with number and then the number of the item, and then answer with G o kaya B o kaya PNU, whichever is appropriate. So the guide is right there. For example, subukan natin sa mga teachers, kung dear professors, baka kayo pwede pong unang sumagot dito. Let's have cooking. Cooking, is that a girl thing or a boy thing or could be for both? So your answer is supposed to start with number 1, okay? Tapos G, B, or P and U if it's for both. Ayan, Ma'am Hannah, thank you very much for jump-starting the activity. Now let's have number 2. How about pink? Pink. Number 2, pink. All right. Ma'am Dina, this is Ma'am Dina. All right. And then the rest are giving their responses. Common response, P and U. How about 6-pack? And I'm referring to ang tawag natin sa Pilipinas pandesal, no? 6-pack. So 6-pack for number 3. All right. I see an answer. Okay. P and U as well. How about childbirth? Childbirth. Number 4, childbirth. Number 4 is childbirth. Okay, Christine got it right. And so with the rest, number 4 is childbirth. Okay, how about lawyer? Lawyer is number 5. Lawyer, number 5. And of course, number 6, teacher. Teacher, the profession of many of us. The future profession of the students right here. Number 6 is P and U. Okay, so what is this activity trying to imply? It's implying that we are associating certain roles to each sex. And it's possible that others are associating these roles differently according to gender constructions, kung tawagin nila. But based on your responses, I am glad that this is an exemplification of what I'd like to believe to be a group representing the woke generation. Karamihan sa inyo ay nagbe-belong sa Generation Z. Sa amin siguro karamihan sa mga teachers niya din ay nasa millennial generation. But you know the term woke, and this means enlightened sa mga bagay-bagay, mas aware sa mga bagay-bagay na kailangang bigyan ng attention. So based on the responses, thank you for affirming that you are indeed woke as far as this issue is concerned. However, of course, we acknowledge that this is not just a simple identifying of a girl thing or a boy thing or both. Dahil mas malawakan o mas malaki ang problema na kailangan nating tignan para sa ganon appropriately ma-address din natin. Okay? So ang focus ng discussion ko ngayon will be the following discussion points or talking points. As a gender sensitivity training, which is very basic in gender and development, it's actually the first step to gender and development trainings. I'm going to be emphasizing on some basic gender concepts. Maaaring ito ay na-touch na sa mga previous na lessons ninyo sa NSTP o kaya sa mga in your other subjects or courses. But I hope it helps that we talk about them again and hopefully in a better or different perspective. Or better yet, sa mga iba na maaaring may ibang understanding sa mga konseptong to, this is an opportunity to unlearn. Okay, so we'll talk about basic concepts, and then later on, after those basic concepts, we'll talk about some gender-based issues. So hopefully makatulong itong discussion na to in order for you to identify the red flags of gender-based issues. So detecting gender-based issues, which may come in overt manners or kaya naman subtle. So they come in overt covert na mga manners, no? So gusto nating ma-identify na ito pala ay red flag na, it's already a gender-based issue. And then towards the end, of course, ways forward on how to address these gender-based issues based on our capacities. So we'll share different ideas on how to address gender-based issues. All right, now let's begin with an example of learning material. So I got this in the social media sometime last year. Panahon na usong-uso ang mga modules at ang mga materials na napapansin na merong maaring kakulangan ay sinishare sa social media. So I'm sure you're familiar with some of them. So ito ay isang apparently grade 8 MAPE module that talks about the emotional self and categorizes the feminine and masculine and associates corresponding adjectives or characteristics of what it means to be a feminine or masculine. So what you see highlighted there would be some characteristics of a feminine, particularly yung arrow ay pointing to passive. Totoo ba yan? Naniniwala ba kayo na ang feminine ay passive? Naniniwala ba kayo na ang feminine ay submissive? If you are feminine, do you yield to this idea that a feminine is tender? Okay? O kaya naman masculine is aggressive. Kung ikaw ay masculine, ikaw daw ay dominant. Ikaw daw ay in control. Ikaw daw ay tough. So, of course, these kinds of learning materials get the attention of many netizens, especially the woke individuals, because they perceive that there's something that needs to be corrected as far as these kinds of materials are concerned. And mind you, we're teaching this to the students, to the younger generation. So may implication siya. Alam na alam niyo yan as future educators. Now, of course, in the context of the pandemic, may mga balita din na tumataas ang mga kaso ng gender-based issues o kaya violence. Halimbawa ng mga gender-based issues ay mga naka-identify dito sa type na column. So rape, child abuse, VAUSI, acts of lasciviousness, trafficking, sexual harassment. Now, the claim is that tumataas ang violence. Tumaas ang violence nitong konteksto ng pandemya. But data here would show that there is a drop of the number of GBV. And this data came from the initial research or survey done by the PCW in cooperation with the PNP. Pero ang claim ng PCW is that parang hindi totoo yan. Not that they're questioning the data. But PCW or the Philippine Commission on Women claims that something needs further research because globally, the claim is that tumaas ang domestic violence. Exacerbating factors include security, health, and money worries, cramped living conditions, isolation with abusers, movement restrictions, etc. Ibig sabihin, merong mga hindi nare-report because of the limited actions of the victims. And in fact, unfortunately, yung iba ay they even live with the perpetrators. So ang opportunity to be able to report complaints or gender-based violence ay nalilimitahan din. But recent studies would also claim na dumadami ang violence nitong panahon ng pandemic. And the World Health Organization calls this, the UN Women calls this the shadow pandemic. The shadow pandemic. We're focused with the COVID-19 pandemic, but we don't realize that there's also a pandemic that's happening subtly. And this is the shadow pandemic. Now, we give attention to this shadow pandemic, and we talk about this rooting or tracing this presence of violence as, again, back to the system of male dominance, which is called patriarchy. So marami kayong maririnig na konsepto, no? Maaring alam nyo na yung mga meanings ng mga to. But I'll present them according to how research works and sources would define them. And hopefully makontextualize natin, no, through examples. So we say that kaya merong ganitong problema ng gender-based violence and issues ay dahil sa sistema na meron tayo dito sa mundo, hindi lang sa Pilipinas, which is the social system of patriarchy. So simply put, the idea of patriarchy is that there is dominance of male in terms of many aspects, sa politika, sa responsibilities, sa decision making, sa capacities, thereby making the female subordinate. So ang implication nun, dear students, is that merong inequality kasi may dominant at merong subordinate. So merong nakakreate na hierarchy, merong mas mataas, merong mas mababa. And this is where everything else comes, yields to. There's a lot of impacts of patriarchy. Number one, of course, is inequality. And we know the implications of inequality. Anong nangyayari kapag sinasabing mas mataas yung isa o mas mababa yung isa? Diba? Doon na pumapasok yung one is stronger, the other is weaker. Kaya sa ilan sa mga works ng mga philosophers, dinidiscuss ang usaping ang babae ang second sex. And we're trying to correct that because there should not be such thing as the second sex, the first sex. In fact, pati yung third sex. Dapat hindi ganyan. Now, ano pa ang impacts ng patriarchy? We have, I tried to create an acronym to refer to these impacts. And I came up with the acronym DEMO, kaya DEMOV, if it includes violence. So hopefully makatulong yan para mas madaling tandaan, no? DEMO, discrimination, exploitation, marginalization, oppression, and violence. Iba't ibang klase ng inequality, pero they point to the same thing, that it is against the female sex. Okay? Nadidiscriminate kapag ka ikaw ay nase-set aside dahil sa pananaw sa'yo bilang babae, na-exploit ka dahil ang tingin sa'yo ay mas mahina. So may mga exploitation would come in a form of, subjugating the woman or the female, or using the female as an object for some ends. For example, yung mga human trafficking. Yan, ginagamit ang babae para sa isang bagay. Let's say prostitution is one example of exploitation. Now, marginalization naman would be relegating the female to certain roles or capacities only. Dahil ang pananaw ng society ay mas mahina ang babae, So nililimitahan nila ang babae na ang role lamang ay domestic chores or domestic duties. Once upon a time, in the 1700, ang mga babae ay merong modules. So ginawa ng government ang modules na to para sa mga babae, but the modules would concentrate only on domestic duties, such that the government believes that women should not be taught beyond domestic duties. Kasi nga, pangbahay lang sila. So marginalized. Oppression, of course, would be the overt actions that are done against women because they are women. And of course, pumapasok na dito yung violence, yung sinasabing pinakamatinding impact ng patriarchy kasi meron na siyang mga iba't ibang epekto sa buhay, sa pananaw, sa mentality ng isang biktima at ganun din ng society. Now, these are just some ideas on the impacts of patriarchy, and we want to be able to talk about them so that we know, or we also recognize to ourselves kung ano yung maaaring mga bagay na baka naman ako ay guilty na of this o baka naman ako ay nakakagawa na ng mga ganito. So hopefully yung gender sensitivity and awareness na goal natin ay ma-meet natin by the end of the session. Now, where does it all begin? I think that there's also a significant impact for people when they identify the sex of the unborn. So yung baby hindi pa pinapanganak, meron na siyang identity. Nadidictate na yung identity para sa kanya. What I call this the gender reveal problem. In a more traditional sense, I call this the traditional version. Ang mga magulang ang society natin ay sinasabing babae o lalaki ang anak ng nanay base sa itsura niya. So if you're from the province, this is still an in thing na kapag magandang itsura ng nanay, sinasabing ang bata ay babae. You know, such things that do not necessarily have scientific basis. Ngayong mas moderno na ang panahon, ang gender reveal natin ay in a form of a lot of things. So, you know, through balloons, through pop-up, through cakes. But what's common to them is that they assign colors to the male, to the girl or the boy, to the baby girl or the baby girl. And I hope you see the problem here. The implication of this is that ina-assign na natin kung ano ang laruan, ano ang kulay, ano ang dapat gustuhin ng bata, hindi pa man siya pinapanganak. Now, if this goes on or if this is carried over until adulthood, it may perpetuate to the existing gender inequality. So something has to be done about that. Ngayon, how about yung expression na kababae mong tao o palibhasa lalaki? Yan. Ang tanong dyan ay, ano yung kwentong kababae mong tao, palibhasa lalaki o kalalaki mong tao? The same thing. Have you ever experienced being told such because of your action or because the way you carried yourself? O kaya yung paraan kung paano ka nagsalita? Sinabihan kang kababae mong tao, nakabukaka ka. Na kababae mong tao, ang ingay-ingay mo. O kaya naman, kalalaki mong tao, umiiyak ka. Ano ang kwentong kababae mong tao, kalalaki mong tao ninyo? So think about that experience. How did that make you feel? Or how do you think did the other person you told that to feel? Okay? I hope you perceive the problem here. Now, we have these kinds of perceptions and statements about people and against people or against people because probably we have been influenced very much by the society that tolerates these kinds of thinking. And I hope we perceive that it's about time we battle with them. Yung kanta nga kanina, yung unang kanta about sa pagbangon ng babae. Iba na yung panahon ngayon. That's the message. If once upon a time we tolerated such wrongdoings and in fact did perceive them as wrong, ngayon meron na tayong mas malinaw na basehan para sabihin na ito ay hindi dapat pinagpapatuloy gawin. So, it's important to go back to basics. And here, I'm going to talk about some basic terms on gender and development. In gender and development, dear students, this always begins with a discussion of the difference between sex and gender. So, ang sex at gender ay isang common na dichotomy at madalas ang ating ginagamit to refer to the male and the female would be gender. So when you're asked what is your sex, I hope your answer is male or female. Although there's a third one, which is intersex in the Philippines, as far as our laws are concerned, it's not yet acknowledged. Now, gender is a different thing. So kapag tinanong kayo ng gender, sana hindi kayo sumagot ng female or male because that's appropriately under sex. Okay? Sex is biological, gender identity is socially constructed. Here you see on the right side of the slide, the gender-bred person referring to this part of the body, the genitalia, as the sex. Now, specifically, ang sex ay yung mga biological differentiation ng babae at lalaki. Ano ba yung mga primary sex characteristics natin? So we can refer to our female genitalia or the vagina and the male genitalia or the penis. Okay, so that is what makes us distinct, and those are biological differences. Secondary sex characteristics would refer to, for example, ano yung mga nangyayari during puberty. Di ba sa lalaki, meron siyang nade-develop na facial hair. Okay, meron din siyang nade-develop na mas prominent na Adam's apple. Although, of course, they say na sa babae, meron din naman hindi lang mas prominent. The voice, di ba, yung voice ng lalaki nag-iiba. So mas nagiging I don't know the description, but yeah, you know what I mean. From a certain tone to another, so nagbabago. Sa mga babae, meron din namang pagbabago. So the development of the breasts, of course comes the menstruation, etc. So those are secondary sex characteristics. Yun yung biological, hindi natin pinipili. It's part of our being males and females. Okay? Ngayon, yung gender naman ay sinasabing socially constructed. In fact, ang gender na usapin ay may mga specific pang mga detalye yan. But generally, when we talk about gender, this is the differentiation between masculinity and femininity. So it pertains to traits, to norms, stereotypes, and roles of men and women. So dito na pumapasok yung kung paano ang society natin ay dinidikta o ini-impose kung ano ang roles ng babae, ano ang traits ng lalaki, ano ang norms, so ano yung ano dapat ang standards ng babae at lalaki sa society, from which develops our stereotypes of the male and female and our limitations of the roles men and women or males and females would play. Kaya nakadevelop tayo na pink ay babae o kaya blue ay pang lalaki. O kaya naman ang pagluluto ay sa babae, ang pagtatrabaho ay sa lalaki. So all of these are influenced by our socialization in the various societal institutions, from the government institutional level to the family level. Interaction with people. Okay? Now, may mga specific pang usapin ang gender. At isa dito ay yung gender role. So ano yung gender role? Ito yung specific nga that tackles the social role or behavior of individuals. The specific social roles or behaviors of individuals, such that our choice of toys. Do you remember what were the toys you played when you were younger? Pinagbawalan ba kayo, girls, na maglaro ng mga trucks or cars kasi panlalaki yon? So, yung orientation na ganon ng older generation or ng authorities natin may influence our understanding of gender roles. So that this career is for the female, di ba ang sabi nila, teachers pambabae yan. Kaya salamat sa mga kalalakihan na pumili ng teaching profession kasi you are debunking this stereotype. In fact, hindi naman dapat nililimitahan. Pero yan again, those are influenced by our societal influences. Yung gender roles ay influenced din ng gender ideology. Yan. So gender ideology here would refer to how the male and the female are again dictated by the kind of roles that they should play. So ito yung nagdidictate para actually it leads again to gender inequality. So and gender hierarchy, or sometimes sinatawag din itong hegemonic hierarchy. You see right there. So there is asymmetry, there is imbalance. Kasi ang babae ay ang babae ay submissive, ang lalaki ay dominant. Okay? Now, from which again develops our idea of babae kasi o kaya kababaeng tao. Kasi babae ka kaya dapat ganito. But according to Dr. Natalie Verceles, one of the leading gender studies experts in the Philippines, there are only 3 things, okay, or let me say that again, there are 3 things only a woman can do for society. Remember, it's not saying, ito lang ang kayang gawin ng babae. There are 3 things only a woman can do. Ito yung mga bagay na babae lang ang kayang makagawa nito. The first one is to carry a child in her womb. So very good to those who answered na ang childbearing ay para lang sa babae. I mean, it's biologically female's capacity. Give birth is also one thing that biologically only a woman can do. Breastfeeding based on our physiology is also limited to the woman. But all the rest, again, all the rest that we say a woman is or woman can do are part of gender constructions. So hindi na yun na-justify ng mga sinasabing ang babae ay ganito kasi babae siya. So what culture says, what women cannot do or cannot be, what women are entitled to, these are all dictated by the society based on certain stereotypes. Now, another offshoot or a term that should be elaborated under gender is the gender identity. Yung gender identity, di ba pag sinabi natin may identity ako, ito ay identity ko bilang student leader. I look forward to listening to our student leaders later on. Ito ang tatak ko bilang isang parte ng pamilyang ito. So you're creating your identity such that, for example, politicians are also creating their own identities as politicians. So para tumatak o para matandaan. But when we talk about gender identity, this would be your personal conception of yourself. So who or what you are. Now, this may not necessarily be in accordance to your sex. So you can be a female, okay, but your gender identity may be different from it. It depends on your own choice and liking, or on your own determination. Sabi nga dyan, it's self-identified. But this may be influenced by combination of inherent and extrinsic or environmental factors. So it's both, as they say, nature and nurture. Again, gender identity is who you are, and that does not necessarily follow from your biological sex, which is fixed. Okay. Another one is gender expression. So sa gender expression, mas familiar siguro tayo dito, no? Ito yung nakikita natin sa tao. Paano ba niya dinadala o pinapakita yung kanyang gender identity? O kaya minsan paano niya pinapakita yung kanyang biological sex? But usually gender expression would emanate from your determination of who you are. So kung ako, for example, ay feminine, the way I express my gender would be usually the way a feminine would represent herself. So nandyan sa kung paano manamit, kung paano mag-behave, kung paano magsalita. So, but again, all of these are social constructions. And well, there's nothing wrong with gender expression. Okay. Because again, this is manifestation of your personal gender identity. External manifestation. Ibig sabihin, yan yung napaperceive sa'yo. Yan yung nakikita sa'yo. Now, these may or may not conform to socially defined behaviors and characteristics typically associated with being either masculine or feminine. Merong mga iba dyan, ang gender expression ay sabi nga, non-conforming. So they don't want to subscribe to the usual constructions about male and female or masculine and feminine. So, they would carry themselves according to how they feel would be the expression of their gender identity. And syempre, huli sa basic na terms sa gender sensitivity and awareness ay yung sexual orientation. So the sexual orientation would be your pattern of emotional, romantic, and sexual attraction. So it represents in the gender-bred person, it represents the heart or the feeling or the emotion. How you are attracted to the other person. Are you attracted to the opposite sex, to others, or to the both male and female? So dyan pumapasok yung alphabet natin ng LGBTQ+. And it's expanding through time. So maraming mas nare-recognize o na-inclusivize, I may say, na mga iba't ibang orientation. And this gives importance to sexuality as part of who we are as human beings. Beyond the ability to reproduce, sexuality also defines how we see ourselves and how we physically relate to other people. Okay? Of course, it is to be acknowledged that there are those individuals na tinatawag na asexual, no? So ito ay isa ding parte ng LGBTQ+ alphabet. In summary, this is how we can illustrate the gender concepts, the gender and development concepts. So you see right here the gender unicorn. Yan. Si the gender unicorn, nire-represent niya yung mga iba't ibang terms ng diniscuss ko kanina: identity, expression, sex, and then this would refer to the sexual orientation. Now, why do we talk about these things? It's important to learn or understand kung ano itong mga bagay na to, kung ano yung difference nila, because, of course, our thoughts become our words become our action. So kung anong iniisip mo tungkol sa term na yon, maaaring lumabas sa salita mo at maaaring ito din ay mag-manifest sa action mo. Kaya we want to be able to start with our knowledge about these concepts appropriately, the right information, so that we also carry out the right actions ultimately. We want to be able to abandon the gender blindness. So kayo ba ay may mga tendency na maging gender blind? Pag sinabing gender blind, ito yung walang pakialam sa mga gender issues. O kaya you're not aware that you might be perpetuating gender-based issues already. Baka naman nagiging discriminatory na yung mga salita mo sa mga kababaihan o maski sa mga kalalakihan din. O kaya yung mga sa LGBTQ+. Diba? So we want to be able to move from this part of the continuum towards gender accountability. So it's a long process, dear students. It's a long process. And in fact, it takes doing this as a habit to be able to perfect it, or if not practice it appropriately. But I will share to you some things that some initial things that we can do to practice gender accountability. So this is the idea of gender and development, gender sensitivity and awareness. We want to be aware of the meanings and the implications of the basic concepts. So far naaral natin yung konsepto dun sa gender unicorn o kaya gender-bred person. Notice that I said gender-bred person, not gender man. Or, di ba, alam natin yun na ginger man. Pero gusto nating mas maging neutral sa ating terms. Kaya wag tayong gumamit ng sexist na mga konsepto. So about time. Now, what are those gender-based issues that I've been talking about? Nagbanggit ako ng mga ilan kanina. At ngayon, pag-usapan natin paano ba tayo how do we find out or how do we detect that this act or this word or gesture of an individual or my own actions could be considered as gender-based issues already? So ano-ano yung mga bagay na ito? Now, again, I go back to the demo that I said earlier. So we can trace the history of history of violence and inequality between men and women, and we can trace several examples of discrimination, exploitation, marginalization, oppression, and violence. Halimbawa sa mga ito ay yung pag-deprive sa babae ng mga basic na karapatan. Okay. For example, the right to education. The right to education. Once upon a time, because the society believed that women are not capable of intellectual capacities, hindi sila pinayagang makapag-aral. Nag-agree ba kayo dito, students, na wala tayong kakayahang mag-aral, wala tayong kakayahang matuto? In effect, wala ring karapatan ang mga babae to participate in political activities. So they were deprived opportunities to run for public office. Yung ideas nila talagang nadi-disregard. Once upon a time, during the time of the ancient Greek period, ang mga babae ay pwedeng i-divorce ng kanilang asawa on the basis of rape. So pag na-rape ang babae, ito ay pwedeng ground para sa kanyang asawa para i-divorce siya. Because if the woman is the victim of violence, hindi siya pwedeng mag-represent ng sarili niya. Kailangan meron siyang guardian, guardian. It's like what happened to Britney Spears, no? Yung the term that they use right now is starts with letter C, pero it's the idea is the same thing as the concept of the ancient Greek period na guardianship. So, violence, of course, we could talk about a lot of issues of violence until the present time. Now, gender-based violence would refer to violence directed against a person because babae siya, because gay siya, because ganito siya. So, just because. And that's not at all acceptable. Babae ka kasi kaya you deserve this. Diba? Both men and women, to emphasize, ang babae at lalaki ay parehong nakakaranas ng ganitong violence. However, reports would say that karamihan nga sa mga biktima nito ay women and girls. Okay, so let me just emphasize that all, both male and females are victims of gender-based violence. And we don't want that. Minsan nga yung mga babae rin na iba ang nambibiktima ng mga fellow na kababaihan. So we want to be able to identify them and hopefully act on them para hindi na natin patuloy na ma-perpetuate yung ganitong mga violence. Base sa batas natin sa Pilipinas, thanks to our national legislations, meron namang paraan para protektahan ang babae sa mga violence. But I'd like to talk about the types of violence indicated in the Republic Act 9262. I hope you don't forget that. That's RA 9262, the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act. Okay. So here it specifies 4 types of violence, and the first is physical. So of course, yung physical yan yung bodily na harm, sinaktan, sinuntok, sinampal, tinadyakan. So physical violence. Psychological naman would come in a form of intimidation, even stalking. Dear students, even stalking is an example of psychological violence. If you feel like you're being followed and you're being stalked by a person, particularly the person you have a relationship with. So yung batas natin na to naka-specify na ma-identify yung mga types of violence in the context of, let's say, marriage or sexual relationship or romantic relationship. So this applies to, for example, even lesbian couples or yung mga live-in partners, pati yung boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. Okay? and even to your ex. So kung may mga ganitong klase ng violence, ang batas natin na RA 9262 ay meron siyang karampatang mga penalties if the perpetrator is found guilty of any of these types of violence. Economic violence would refer to of course yung financial restraints na ginagawa halimbawa ng isang father o ng isang male husband sa kanyang asawa, yung hindi ina-allow na magkaroon ng freedom sa kanyang finances o hindi ina-allow magtrabaho o kinokontrol yung pera ng babae. That is an example of economic violence. Even yung hindi pag-support, pagbigay ng financial support.
Ako nasa Santino pa hanggang tanghali.
Alright? And then, sexual violence.
Pati din mga sundalo at police, edi, nag-order na lang ako lang sa bayan. Hindi na, ang hirap na gumagawa. Nung nakaraan na birthday ni Mahal, nag-order na lang ako.
Can somebody please read Cyrene or Cyrene?
Saka nga mari, yung halimbawa, pagpapaganap ka, mamimili ka, pagod ka, oras pa. Tapos ihanda mo pa yung bagong pamagayat.
Can you, Ma'am Cyrene?
Hello na.
Mute na lang po so we don't disturb the other participants.
Hello na?
Okay, that's better. And then sexual violence, of course, ito na yung mga instances when a woman or girl is sexually violated. So such forms are really egregious, as they say. Ito yung mga matitinding, lahat naman ng klase ng violence matindi against the woman. And lahat ng mga to ay kino-cover ng Anti-VAUC, okay? Anti-VAUC Act. Now, those are some terms that you should know, types of violence. And hopefully, ma-delineate ninyo or ma-identify ninyo kung ano ba ang difference ng psychological, physical, economic, at saka sexual. There's 4 of them under the RA 9262. And of course, there's also sexism. So, medyo popular na usapin yung sexism itong panahon ngayon kasi madami tayong mga nakikita sa social media, sa mga news, na mga actuations or gestures ng mga prominent people that may count as sexism. Kasi they come in a form of, through their behavior, through their speech, through their writing, yan yung mga bagay na yan. Pwede ding in a form of policy. So, ang sexism ay prejudice o discrimination against a person, not only to the female, no, or group based on their sex or gender. It primarily affects women and girls, and it's considered as the root cause of gender inequity worldwide. Imagine that. So, isa siyang prejudice or discrimination based on a person's sex or gender. And it can lead to a wide range of harmful behaviors, from acts of violence to subtle comments that reinforce stereotypes. So they may be gestures, actions, speech, writing, images, practices, and traditions. Ang kaakibat ng sexism ay yung usapin ng misogyny. So misogyny is primarily a property of social systems or environments as a whole in which women will tend to face hostility. In fact, ang misogyny ay sinasabing violent expression of sexism. This is the hatred against women. Para bang galit ka sa isang tao, natatrato mong hostile ang isang tao dahil babae siya. Okay, so nag-emanate siya sa sexism, but mas specific na application ng sexism ang misogyny. So you can look at it that way. May mga kalalakihan din na nabibiktima ng hatred at ng hostility. And the counterpart of misogyny, for the males would be called misandry. Right now, merong growing na discussions na may mga kalalakihan ding nabibiktima na because they are males. May mga usapin ng masculine studies na hindi na lang female or women's studies ngayon. So we're trying to be more inclusive and encompassing. Kaya nga gender studies yung mas angkop na tawag dyan. Now, let's talk about the different types of sexism. Ano-ano yung mga bagay na maaaring nagagawa natin na pwedeng mag-fall sa categories ng types of sexism. Una ay yung hostile sexism. When we say something is hostile, ito ay overt na acts against, o yung meron ng involved na maaaring pananakit, o kaya pagkutsa, o kaya demean sa isang tao. This refers to beliefs and behaviors that are openly hostile. Openly hostile. There is a blatant expression of hatred of women. Kaya kung may mga na-encounter kayong stories of assault sa mga babae dahil babae sila. Yan, example yan ng hostile sexism. This is coming from the perspective na ang mga hostile sexists may view women as manipulative. They're capable of using seduction to control men, and that they're deceitful. So ganyan ang prejudice ng mga hostile sexists sa mga babae. So yung views na to may also apply to anyone with feminine traits and anyone who expresses their gender in a way that is associated with femininity. So ano ang ilan sa mga examples nito? You may be guilty of hostile sexism if you use sexist language or insults, or when you make threatening or aggressive comments based on a person's gender or sex, or when you harass or threaten someone for defying gender norms, online or offline. Mga tipong pag-threaten, pag-harass nga na dahil babae yung isang tao, or let's say those who are homophobic, so may exude acts of hostile sexism. Yung mga babae who are stepping out of line, okay, and believing that some victims of sexual assault ask for it. Remember that 2020 incident of Iha Ako kay Pangilinan versus Tulfo, when she was told, when she reacted, when Pangilinan reacted against the remark of one of the Tulfo brothers on the incidents of rape. Kaya may rape kasi ganyan kayo manamit, di ba? Yung victim blaming kung tawagin. The women asked for it. The women seduced the men. Parang ganun. So, yan ay isang example ng hostile sexism. Now, the second one, ang pangalawa ay tinatawag na benevolent sexism. Ito, napaka-tricky ng benevolent sexism kasi dinadaan siya sa benevolence. So, when we say benevolence, ito yung acts of kindness, no, doing acts of kindness. The premise of benevolent sexism is ang mga babae daw, ang tingin nila sa kanila ng mga benevolent sexists ay the women are innocent, the women are pure, caring, kailangan alagaan. So fragile ang babae, and so you need to be protected. Okay? The woman is beautiful. So kino-compliment ko yung beauty niya. But actually, ang effect niyan sa babae ay nahaharas siya or may feeling siya na hindi safe. Now that's benevolent sexism. Okay, so ano ang impact ng ganitong klase ng benevolent sexism? Nagdi-diminish yung value o yung confidence ng babae. But more than that, some examples of benevolent sexism that I can share would be yung pag-hire sa isang babae dahil maganda siya o dahil sexy siya. Pero it's primarily because of that. Basing a woman's value on her role as a mother, wife, or girlfriend. Sige na, pauwiin mo na siya kasi kawawa naman siya, may mga anak pa siya o may asawa pa siya. So this is actually very subjective perception. Pero it's also a form of sexism because yung acts of seemingly kindness, okay? Yung sexism ay sugar-coated ng acts of kindness. So, believing that people should not do things for themselves, such as manage money or drive a car because of their gender. Ako na magdadrive. Ako na handle ng pera kasi baka hindi mo kaya. O kaya relegating duties such as sige, ikaw nang gumawa ng trabaho ng committee na yan kasi babae ka, mas organized ka. Right? It's supposed to be a compliment, but it's actually limiting the woman on her capacity because of the associated benevolent characters. Assuming that a person is a nurse, assistant, or secretary, when we say, try nyong mag-search ng secretary sa Google, you will find searches na ang dominant search images would be image of a woman, of a female. Pag doctor, ang in-associate nating pronoun ay he. Pag lawyer, ganun din. Pag executive, mga pang matataas na position, pang males. So that's also benevolent sexism. Okay? Now, the third would be ambivalent sexism. So, ano bang ibig sabihin ng ambivalent? Ano siya? Meron siyang blur, no? Meron siyang ambiguity. Hindi alam kung saan. It's actually kasi a combination of benevolent and hostile sexism. So minsan ang ambivalent sexist would treat a woman as based on the premise of hostile sexism. Yung iba naman tinitreat siya based on the perspective of benevolent sexism. Okay? So yung examples nito would be glorifying traditional feminine behavior and demonizing unladylike behavior. A more relatable example maybe would be may i-hire na isang babae because she's attractive, pero kapag siya ay hindi nag-succumb sa sexual advances ng, let's say, boss, ifa-fire siya. Okay? So those are some ways in which we can detect na may mga acts of sexism sa mga gestures o paniniwala o policies ng mga institutions, groups, and societies. Furthermore, meron pa tayong ibang pwedeng paraan para makita ang sexism. Pwedeng sa institutional level. So we call this institutional sexism. So this refers to sexism that is entrenched in organizations and institutions. Halimbawa, yung mga policies ay sexist, yung government directives ay sexist, yung legal system ay may mga naka-entrenched na mga discriminatory policies, and in fact, totoo yan para sa Pilipinas. May the previous laws or the earlier laws that concern relationships or women's rights or women's privileges, some of the provisions are actually sexist. So thanks to our more recent law, meron ng directive ang batas na yon, which I'm referring to the Magna Carta of Women, may directive na dapat i-repeal o kaya i-amend ang mga batas na discriminatory sa babae. Halimbawa yung kailangan may repeated na physical assault sa babae para makapag-file siya ng annulment. Nakalagay yun sa ating family code, sa family code. Or sa civil code. So kailangan daw paulit-ulit yung pananakit sa babae para makapag-file siya ng annulment. And there's a lot more, So naka-enmesh, naka-integrate sa policies, sa institutions yung sexism when we call it institutional sexism. Okay? The next one, interpersonal sexism. This is manifested during interactions with others. Pwede siyang mag-occur among your peers, okay, in the workplace, within relationships, among family members, and even interactions with strangers. So, for example, we have telling someone to be more ladylike. Magpaka-ano ka nga, umayos ka nga, kababae mong tao. O kaya judging someone for not fitting into stereotypes of femininity, para kang hindi babae. O kaya para kang lalaking mag-isip. That's not exactly complimenting a person. It's an interpersonal sexism. or justifying sexist behavior by saying that ganyan talaga ang mga lalaki. Bakit ganun ang lalaki? Bakit ganun siya magsalita? Boys will be boys. Okay, so remember, these are examples of interpersonal sexism. Now, maaring matindi ring klase ng sexism ay yung internalized sexism. So dito na pumapasok yung tayo na mismo yung nagkakaroon ng sexist beliefs. Sexist beliefs that we have about ourselves. So dapat hindi ako ganito kasi babae ako. Okay? Dapat demure lang ako kasi according to the society, mas acceptable kapag demure ang babae. Usually, a person adopts these beliefs involuntarily as a result na of social factors, as a result to exposure to sexist behaviors, o kaya yung opinion ng ibang tao. So pumapasok dito yung pakiramdam ng isang babae na incompetent siya o kaya nagda-doubt na siya sa kanyang kakayahan at meron na siyang pakiramdam ng powerlessness and shame. So even you yourself, if you are guilty of internalized sexism, you feel that you have to act according to the expectations of the society. Meron ng research na nagsasabi na ang mga babae daw sa disciplines ng science, technology, engineering, and mathematics ay mas mababa yung pag-rate nila sa kakayahan nila because of internalized sexism. Diba? Men are good in math and women in, I don't know, English or whatever. No? So yung mga ganong stereotypes. So, ilan sa mga examples nga dito as what I indicated there ay yung victim blaming or you feeling ashamed of aspects of being female, such as having periods or female genitalia. And you're feeling that is essential to conform to gender ideals. Diba? So, mga ganitong actuations, no? These are all perpetuating internalized sexism. So these are all problematic kahit na anong klase pa sila, no? They are all problematic and they result to further perpetuating inequality in the society. Now another more specific example siguro, just to go to the last few points before I go to addressing the gender-based issues, ay ang common din sa atin, which is catcalling. So when once upon a time we would consider being called out sexy, o kaya yung mga napipituhan in public, yan ay okay lang. Ngayon, thanks to our law, the Safe Spaces Act, hindi na yan basta-basta pwedeng gawin. Actually, hindi dapat ginagawa ng kahit na sino man. We call this street harassment. Okay? In the Philippines, it is legally considered as a form of sexual harassment if you are catcalled, and catcalling happens in the context of the public spaces. Itong batas na to, yung Safe Spaces Act, is a response to what has been perceived as lacking in the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act. Okay, kasi may mga nangyayaring mga harassment in public, at nung bago yung Safe Spaces Act, wala pang nagpe-penalize sa catcalling. So wala kang pwedeng ma-file kasi walang existing na batas. Pero ngayon meron na since 2019. So catcalling is an example of sexism. Itong konsepto na to ay unang ginamit nung panahon ng earlier times, where those who would go to the theater shows would react against the show, no? May mga reactions from the audience. At nakuha yung idea ng catcalling kasi from that practice, nagre-resemble siya ng sound ng cat. And then eventually it evolved into a concept that we use it now. So form of objectification. Now, another one. The two most common forms of catcalling would be wolf whistling and then shout compliments. Shout compliments. For example, this. hi sexy, o kaya pinipituan, o kaya can I have your number, where are you going beautiful. So lahat ng yan, if you're in a public space na if you feel unsafe, so that may count as form of catcalling. Catcalling may make women feel unsafe and can be psychologically damaging. In fact, there's a lot of stories na natotrauma ang mga kababaihan dahil sa pagka-catcall o kaya ayaw na nilang lumabas because of these experiences. Now, these are just some of the gender-based issues, and in fact, there's a lot more that come in various concepts and terms, but these are the most common ones that I can share. You may also want to share what other gender-based issues do you know? Meron pa bang mga iba pa? Generally, encapsulate sila dun sa mga nabanggit ko, but please go ahead and share if you have other ideas. So we've talked about these important concepts, the definitions of these. Na-cover natin itong mga discussions na to. I hope na iintindihan naman yung mga different conceptions ng mga terms na to. And the next question is, so what? So ano nang mangyayari ngayon? Ngayon na alam ko na. In the knowledge level, alam ko kung anong ibig sabihin ng mga konsepto. In the discussion of gender sensitivity and awareness and gender and development, it's not just a discussion of the distinction between sex and gender, of gender issues, but it's also a discussion of action. So now we go to the acts part. So what now? How do we address gender-based issues so that we contribute to the safe space for everyone? Okay, now, there are several gender laws that protects men and women. Okay, primarily women kasi sila nga yung deprived ng mga maraming mga opportunities, privileges, and rights for the longest time. So legislations would come in a form of protecting their welfare and securing their rights, and at the same time protecting them from violence. I can talk about 3 important laws about women or protection of women, and these are the Magna Carta of Women, the Safe Spaces Act, and the Anti-VAUSI Act, or RA 9262. Quickly, I'll talk about what these laws say. So meron tayong Magna Carta of Women. Ito ay pangalawa sa pinaka recent, no, although it's a 2009 law, but it's very groundbreaking because this is the country's gender equality law. Ito yung Biblia ng kababaihan ng Filipino woman. So if you have time, please read the provisions of the Magna Carta of Women. Malalaman nyo ang dami nating human rights protection and privileges, etc. So take note, just to emphasize, the title of the law is Magna Carta of Women, not for, not on, it's of. This is very important to take note of because it has implication. When you say this is for you, you are giving something to the person. Galing sa'yo, diba? So it's not Magna Carta for women. It's also not Magna Carta on women. It's not about the Magna Carta. It only, kasi when we say Magna Carta on women, it only designates women as the subject matter of the law. Tungkol ito sa Magna Carta on women. Rather, it's Magna Carta of, okay, that's a very important preposition to use, so of women, because this means that women have a stake in the law and they possess and own the law. So we own the Magna Carta. This is for us, about us, and by us. Okay, so we call that Magna Carta of Women. Maraming nakalagay dito na iba't ibang provisions, in very encompassing yung mga provisions na to. And as long as you are a woman in the Philippines, you are protected by this law. Another one is the Safe Spaces Act. So I mentioned this earlier. This is a response to what was perceived to be lacking in the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act. Na sa Anti-Sexual Harassment Act kasi, pwede mag-file ang isang biktima against a person who did harassment to her on the basis that meron silang merong moral ascendancy yung perpetrator. So kailangan boss mo siya o kaya may authority siya sa'yo. Samantalang madaming mga nakikitang harassment on the streets. So nabuo ito, na-create ito, na-enact siya noong 2019. Finally, we have protection against gender-based sexual harassment on the streets. Hindi kailangang may relationship kayo nung taong gumawa nun sa'yo. Pwedeng kung stranger siya, pwede mo siyang kasuhan. Pwedeng sa institutions, sa training institutions, workplaces, etc. So I got this from Rappler's, one of the posts of Rappler on the first degree offense of the Bawal Bastos Act. So catcalling may be penalized with this amount at saka pagkakakulong. Mga transphobic, homophobic sexual slurs, pwede rin yan. So kung may mga narinig kayong nagsasabi ng ang mga bakla ay pang parlor lang, that may be penalized under the Safe Spaces Act. So it's actually, the laws are actually very empowering. But of course, we want to be able to use them on proper contexts. Okay? Now, the third is the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act. Ito ay mas luma kumpara sa dalawa. Hindi ako nagkakamali, parang 2008 siya or 2009. So it penalizes any acts or series of acts committed by any person against a woman and or her children, whether legitimate, illegitimate, within or outside the family abode. So kailangan nasa context ng sexual or romantic relationship. So pwedeng ang mga biktima dito ay women as victims by their husbands, ex-husband, etc. Okay? So protected ang babae ng batas na to. In fact, sa batas na to, kino-consider ang violence as a public crime. Ibig sabihin, anyone who may find out na merong offense of violence against a woman may report the incident. So these are just some of the laws na we hope we feel secure, no? Although implementation is another thing. But I hope it makes you aware that you are protected, or you have lifelines, or you have protection by the law. All right, now, what can you personally do? Ano na ngayon? So what? Ngayon na alam ko ang mga batas, alam ko yung mga gender-based issues. What's next? What can you personally do? Worthy of commendation would be your participation here. Sana hindi lang dahil required, pero sana na-appreciate nyo yung initiative ng PNU na kayo ay mag-take part sa gender sensitivity. It's better if we start at a young age. So kayo na mga first-year students at kayo na magiging future educators, it's best that you start as at this age or even younger pa nga, no? Para yung ma-impart natin sa iba ay appropriate din o naaayon din. So attending gender sensitivity and awareness activities, marami yan online. You can take part of such activities for further enhancement of your knowledge on gender and development. Now, these are some ways that we can do at home, or we can share to others in practicing or promoting gender equality, gender justice, and gender balance in daily life. Bakit hindi natin, although nangyayari na to ngayon, why don't we share in the chores? Bakit hindi natin i-practice na ang mga ginagawang akala nating pambabae ay gawin din ng mga kalalakihan? Or how about you inspire your parents to share responsibilities in doing the chores sa pag-aalaga ng mga younger na siblings, o kaya naman even just influencing their manner of using or dictating what should or should not be the case for the males and the females. Pambabae po yan lahat, kaya pwede rin naman yan sa panlalaki. Okay? Now, another one is it says there, offer the bus seat to pregnant women. I think that's also to be done. Hindi dahil babae siya, kundi dahil pregnant siya. Ganun din yung mga persons with disability. Notice signs of violence. So in one way or another, maaaring may mga kaibigan kayo na lalapit sa inyo na magdi-disclose na sila ay biktima ng violence. I hope you lend them an open arms, an open arm and ears para they will be encouraged to do something about it. So itong sa conversation na to, even psychological violence is not okay. It's also a crime. Let's find you some help. I've got your back. Or even just being silent, no? Pwede tayong makatulong. Now, some other practical things that you can do would be to create a safe space. Okay? Create a safe space for as many people and to anyone who would come to you and talk to you about sensitive matters of welfare and gender issues. Ang magandang pwede ninyong gawin ay i-affirm yung mga unconventional choices. Cliche as it may sound, but they say we can tell them it's okay not to be okay, but do not invalidate their feelings. Tsaka wag nyo ding i-disclose sa iba. No? Don't out them. Sabi nga, don't out them to other people. Reassuring that it's okay to be different and encouraging a culture of acceptance and inclusivity. This is very important. Now, other things that you can do would be to challenge stereotypes when you hear them. Okay? Sa social media, even sa mga classes, kung may nakikita kayo mga problematic na materials, please challenge these stereotypes. Or narinig sa mga ibang tao, so you can respectfully say, why can't a boy wear pink? My dad does. Or why can't a girl like football or play basketball or do what what the males do? Pwede rin naman. Bakit yung iba kasi naglalaba ka o kaya naghuhugas ka ng pinggan, bakit mo ginagawa yan? Lalaki ka. Although ngayong panahon na to, mas mulat na tayo sa mga mga responsibilidad natin na pwede rin namang pangbabae at panlalaki. And then finally, use inclusive language. So this is very important as well. Huwag tayong gumamit ng mga language na biased sa isang sex. So I'll give you examples later on about this. You may want to adopt this example of safe spaces guidelines to our professors. You may want to use this as way of fostering safe space in your classrooms. This is also adopted from a gender and development office. I got this online. So be respectful of privacy. In-emphasize ko lang dito yung be careful not to out others. So whatever you talk about in the safe space, wag mong i-out yung nag-disclose, no? Wag mong i-chismis, wag mong i-chika sa ibang tao. What we presume to know about others is often based on stereotyping. So we want to set aside presumptions, find points of agreement as well as points of disagreement. When speaking, speak for yourself only, and of course, ultimately respect. So this is one set of policies or guidelines for fostering safe space. Makakatulong din yung pagtanong, ano ang preferred na pronoun mo? Okay, para ganun kita i-address. Okay? And then, yung sa gender-neutral language, use of, please stop using freshmen. Kasi that's not so gender-neutral. It's a work in progress, so masasanay din tayo. No? Meron tayong ibang pwedeng magamit na terms para maging gender-neutral. So, freshie, first year, frosh. Mga ibang salita din na sexist would be manhood. So instead of manhood, use adulthood. Instead of chairman, use chairperson. Kahit na sigurado tayong male, no, yung biological male yung taong nire-refer natin, pero hindi natin alam kung ano yung kanyang preferred pronoun. So it's more inclusive to use instead chairperson. Congressman, congresswoman, why don't we call them collectively or generally as representative? Policewoman, police officer, law enforcer, manpower, human resource staff personnel. Okay, these are just examples. Now, sa lengguwahe natin, meron ba tayong ganyan? Guilty din ba ang language ng Filipino na sa mga sexist remarks? Actually, when we say chicks, no, although English term yan, no, pero pag sinabi nating chicks, ano ang usually ina-associate natin na sex dito? Hindi ba babae? May chicks na naman si ganitong guy. O kaya Big Daddy would refer to a description of a daddy which is ascribed to the masculine na dominant, strong. Yan. Tapos yung mura, no, yung pagmumura, bakit ang naka-associate dito ay ang ina? So that says something about what we think about the female. Narinig na ba kayong mura na ina-associate sa lalaki? Although pareho naman, hindi naman dapat. Yan. Dapat tigasin ka kasi lalaki ka. Sayang siya, ang gwapo pa naman niya kaso bakla siya. Ang ganda pa naman niya pero tibo siya. Yung mga ganito ay sexist remarks. Hindi naman ikaw nakapalda, bakit ikaw ang tagalaba? Yan mga traditional na perception. So what can you personally do? Acts. Okay? That's ultimately it. You act you act against these gender-based violence. Siyempre sa paraan na tatansyahin natin na hindi naman hostile din sa ibang tao. Yung respectful and courteous pa rin. What can you do as a PNU student? In your context, meron ba kayong nakikitang maaaring problema din? So, follow the process in bringing out or in putting forward actions to be done for it. If the problem you perceive the problem in the classroom, talk to your professor. Kung sa tingin niyo naman meron kayong as an organization of a student organization, meron kayong ipopropose, you talk to your advisor, the advisor will lobby to your administrators. Hindi yung dadaan sa Facebook, no? Meron tayong protocol na dapat sundin. Besides, mga future educators, ayan, naniniwala tayo sa pagsunod sa policies and protocol. Okay? Now, imagine if when you teach your students, no, you get this kind of output. Isang output ito ng isang bata na ang instruction sa kanya ng kanyang teacher ay bilugan ang mga laruang pambabae at ikahon ang mga laruang panlalaki. So, observe kung ano yung ginawa ng bata. Binilugan niya lahat at saka kinahon niya lahat. Ang nakalagay na note doon, pambabae at panlalaki, lahat po ay pwede. This was shared by the sister of the pupil. Sabi niya, ito talaga ang gusto ng bata eh. Sabi ko naman, bahala na kung mamaliin ng teacher. When I further looked at the news about it, sa kanya nang galing yung work na to. She's a grade 1 pupil. Mas woke pa sa maraming mga tao. So imagine if we have these kinds of students, kinds of future generation, people of the future generation. Ano kayang klase ng society meron tayo? So I think it's important to educate people at young stage of their lives to be able to reach that level of what I call nga gender accountability towards inclusivity. So hopefully kayo naman ay makakontribute sa ganitong klase ng initiatives in your own ways as PNU students, as daughters, as sons, as student leaders, as members of your society, so we can achieve finally gender equality and equity. Babae man o lalaki, you can be part of this initiative. All right, so sana we reach that stage nga na there is safe space for everyone. I hope you'll be encouraged as well to share your story. So ano ang kwentong sana all safe spaces mo. Para sa iyo, ano ang komunidad kung saan lahat ng tao malaya sa gender-based sexual harassment every time, anywhere. I would like to end by sharing a poem. This is one of my favorite poems on gender, on what is called the cycle of gender violence. The title is I Got Flowers Today. I got flowers today. It wasn't my birthday or any other special day. We had our first argument last night and he said a lot of cruel things that really hurt. I know that he is sorry and he didn't mean this to say the things he said because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today. It wasn't our anniversary or any other special day. Last night, He threw me into a wall and started to choke me. It seemed like a nightmare. I couldn't believe that it was real. I woke up this morning sore and bruised all over. I know he must be sorry because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today. And it wasn't Valentine's Day or any other special day. Last night, he beat me and threatened to kill me. Makeup and long sleeves didn't hide the cuts and bruises this time. I couldn't go to work today because I didn't want anyone to know. But I know he's sorry because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today, and it wasn't Mother's Day or any other special day. Last night, he beat me again, and it was worse than all of the other times. If I leave him, what will I do? How will I take care of the kids? What about money? I'm afraid of him, but I'm too scared and dependent to leave him. But he must be sorry because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today. Today was a very special day. It was the day of my funeral. Last night, he finally killed me. He beat me to death. If only I had gathered enough courage and strength to leave him, I would not have gotten flowers today. Yeah, so that's a 1992 poem, and we hope we're inspired to bangon, to fight against violence against women. And I say, echoing the song, Bangon PNUSL, Bangon. Thank you very much, PNU South Luzon, for having me. I hope you learned something from today's discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gina. Ang ganda ng ganda ng poem. Are there any questions from the students or from the faculty members? You can unmute yourself. You can open your camera if you want to, and ask your questions. Or you share your story. As what mentioned by our speaker a while ago, you can share your story. It's now our time to share our story. Or any reaction from the group? Sige po. Meron po ba?
Ayona.
Ayan, Ma'am Ayona is raising her hand. Go ahead, Ma'am Ayona.
Hi, good morning. I will not open my cam na lang po because I'm not yet ready. Well, I'm not yet ready. Well, Ma'am Gina, tama po ba?
Yes.
Ma'am Gina, thank you for sharing your expertise, your thoughts with regards to gender and development. And I think it's really time for us to educate each other, especially the young people, because growing up, since I was a kid, well, growing up, there are instances that I actually experienced sexual harassment without me having an idea that it's really happening. So I only realized it when I have to deal with the trauma and I have to go through what do you call it? I have to go through processing and counseling. So yeah, I really for the future teachers that we have right now, I just want to encourage you that whatever it is that you learned from this session is something that you will actually teach to your future students or even to the young generation that you encounter with, because just like what I said, not only for women but also for boys, sexual harassment or sexism is something that we used to live with. I'm sorry if I'm using the right term, but it's something that we used to live with, and we thought it's normal. But then we will realize that at the end of the day, it's actually real, and it's actually it's actually real and it's actually affecting us mentally. So I was reminded kasi with one of our session in understanding the self, Apo, one of our, may isa pa pala akong seminar, wait lang, kailangan ko isara. I realized that with one of our session in understanding the self, nasabi kasi doon ni Karen Hornay na most of the neurotic needs or a mental illness is because of relationship, especially in a male-dominated society. So yeah, that is why this session is something that is encouraging and eye-opening, that we know what is happening to us, especially, and we are aware of the things that are happening to us, so that we can process ourselves and we can actually save ourselves and other people from harassment and violation. So, yun lang po. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ma'am Ayana.
I'll just say a
Yes.
few words, Ma'am Brenda.
Okay, Ma'am.
Thank you for sharing your story, Ma'am Ayona. I know it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. No? But thank you for imparting that, the importance of coming out or talking about it, coming out in the context of talking about the issues, no. Kasi importante talaga 'yon. Alam niyo yung sinasabi ni Ma'am Ayona na we are able to process ourselves and also deal with the trauma, because for all we know, kaya tayo nagbe-behave ng ganito ay dahil merong somewhere in our subconscious na hindi natin ma-address appropriately. So it's important to talk about it, although we understand that people have different pacing, different environment. So I hope you find time sooner or later, kung meron man kayong ganitong similar na napagdaanan, to talk to the right people and finally process those issues within you. And yes, share the opportunity to be able to battle with these problems of harassment, violence, at kung ano-ano pa. Thank you again, Ma'am Ayona, for your sharing.
Just to add, Ma'am Gina, it's actually triggering, topics like this actually triggers the activist in me na parang nakakainis kapag may nakikita o naririnig ka na issues ng violation, especially when just like what I'm sharing this not because for the purpose of sharing. I'm sharing this just for my students to be aware and for them also to have the courage to share, because sometimes we victim blame ourselves that share what we are going through, and some of us don't really understand na yun nga na nangyari pala sa atin. So I'm sharing this just to encourage my students also to share if they're going through this, because I know it's hard and I know it's hard to process the trauma. So I believe Ma'am Brenda is there.
Yes.
yung burden. I believe Ma'am Brenda is there, and even us the faculty members of PNUSL, we're here to help you to go through what you are going through, because like what I said, it's hard to go through these things and we need healing. No, we need healing. It's not only for education purposes, but us. I believe that each of us encounter different forms of violations that actually cause us different types of trauma. So yeah, I just want to encourage the students, if they've gone through things like that, they don't need to hide it. They don't need to hide it in their closet, and they just open it up, because sharing is something that will help them to set them free, I believe, because going through that process, as a testimony, going through that process, I only realized that I was violated when I spilled out already, like it manifested already in my work, in my relationship, in my daily living, and then only to realize that, yeah, things that happened to me in the past is something that is actually manifesting in the present. So you guys, you are still young and you still have time to heal yourself. So Ayun lang po. So don't worry, Ma'am Brenda, and me and the rest of the faculty members are here to listen to you.
Yes. Our office is open 24/7. If you want to tell us what you have gone through, actually, yung PNU God Code, which will be there's a speaker assigned for this institutionalizing of this Safe Spaces Act. We have the PNU God Code, which will be explained to you on December 15. This will give you the guidelines on how to report if you have experienced harassment or any violation against you, against another person, your classmate or a professor or anyone involved or person in the university, ay pwede kayong mag-report. So, tama yung sabi ni Ma'am Iona na we have heard the poem that was shared a while ago. We hope that it won't be too late. We hope that it won't be too late. So if you're experiencing violation, you speak up, and it's not bad to speak up, so that this will be dealt with. Because if you just keep silent, baka kung anong mangyari in the end. So anyone, can we call for representatives from, there are 4 sections, di ba? GE1, GE2, GE3, and GE4. Anyone from GE1? Yes, Miss Karil. Okay, go ahead, Miss Karil.
So good day, ma'am. Good day, everyone. I would like to ask lang po about sa gender inequality na most people na in favor sa LGBTQ+ is ini-involve nila yung Bible. What can you say po sa mga taong ini-involve yung Bible para lang i-down or hindi i-consider ang mga taong member ng LGBTQ+? Yun lang po.
Thank you, Karil. That's a very valid question. In fact, isa yan sa mga curiosity ng marami sa atin. And then that's the starting point of the conflicts. Dahil sabi ng religion, sabi ng Bible, ganito. I'll speak based on my personal perception about this issue. And I would like to emphasize on the importance of respect on anything. Gusto ko sana kung ako lang to correct these perceptions of people, but I think I can only do so much. This is similar to having to deal with homophobic. Mahirap silang paliwanagan kasi meron na silang prejudice at meron na silang nakaset na beliefs. And while we would like to try to correct them or to also put forward our position na sana hindi naman ganun, hindi naman natin i-disrespect. Ang malala kasi doon, ang sinasabi ng mga ilang religious denominations ay mga immoral, di ba, ng mga tao. To me, I think that's too much to judge a person. So, in our own ways, we can probably also put forward our position na for them not to do that. O at least kung hindi man sila maniwala o hindi man sila mag-support sa idea of gender inclusivity and gender equality, at least give respect to these people. It's that yung biblical na usapin ay something na walang katapusan na debate. And hindi tayo talaga matatapos yan. Pero pwede bang we start with the recognition that there really exists these kinds of people. Meron talagang LGBT. Hindi natin pwedeng i-extinguish tong mga to. Meron talagang LGBT. And can we start by recognizing their presence? Anyway, work in progress naman to. So hopefully, eventually, may paglilinaw din na mangyayari tungkol dito. But again, ultimately, let's please respect. If we don't agree, we don't necessarily have to believe, di ba, right away. Let's just respect by being silent primarily siguro. para hindi na makasakit pa sa ibang tao. But Karil, I recognize that is a growing debate in the discussion of LGBTQ+. Thank you for your question.
Thank you po.
Thank you, Karil. Another question, another student is raising his hand. John David, go ahead, John.
Malinaw po ba yung audio ko?
Malinaw naman.
Ma'am, tanong ko lang po tungkol din po sa LGBTQ. Ito po yung parang opinion ko lang din po. Do you consider that LGBT community is breaking their boundary or coverage? Since recently, I don't know if you're aware that the animation for children, the Blue's Clues, features a gender parade that is being led by a drag queen. All I'm trying to say is that I personally think that the special animation tries to brainwash children of thinking that there are a lot of genders, but not straight. You could be a gay, bisexual, lesbian, but not straight. So, ma'am, ano pong masasabi niyo doon?
Thank you for updating us on that Blue's Clues news. I have not seen that, but I'm aware that there are related issues na kaakibat nitong pag-advance ng gender expression. So may mga drag queen. Sabi ko nga, humahaba yung alphabet ng LGBTQ+. Kaya plus na siya kasi parang infinite na siya. What can I say about that? I also recognize that in the process of talking more about gender equality and the rights of the LGBT or the privileges of the LGBT,